Maybe we could take that $40 billion, invest it in something like renewable energy. Just a thought. Maybe put solar panels up, maybe one of those windmills, maybe some geothermal. Yeah, maybe figure out the next fuel. Just a thought. That's why I've asked Robert Weiner. He has written a great piece over at the Miami Herald titled "Brazil is Zooming Ahead on Ethanol. U.S. and World Must Brace for Looming Embarrassment at the 2016 Olympics." Bob, thanks for taking time for me.
It's great to be with you, Rick, and it is such an embarrassment for the United States that Brazil has reduced its deforestation to a fifth of its peak, and they only have 10% of their cars that go on traditional gasoline. They've got 90% of them that run on ethanol, and the price of fueling your car in Brazil is a third cheaper than the United States. We had one of our own policy analysts, Richard Mann, go over to Brazil, and he investigated it. And in the United States, we have 1% of our gas stations capable of ethanol. We have no pipelines capable of carrying them. We've not made any investments. Only 1% of all cars on the road are capable of biofuel, and it's an outrage. Rick, and I've been talking to people about why that's the case, and it's simply a matter of the oil companies and the car companies want to protect the status quo because they have all this money invested in it.
Yeah, of course.
And 60 Minutes did a piece, Rick, 2 years ago. 60 Minutes did a piece on a guy who developed, a GM guy who developed a car capable of 60 miles a gallon in China, and they fired him because it was too far off what the GM car norm was. They fired the guy who developed the car in China, and they wouldn't let it be developed.
Interesting. And, I've heard those stories in the past, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about ethanol, and I mean, you look at the corn prices that are going through the roof, there are those who say we can't use ethanol because, look, 78% of the country's in drought conditions, cost of corn going through the roof. We shouldn't be using, and I kind of agree, we shouldn't be using, corn, something we need to eat, to fuel our cars.
Well, except that Brazil is using sugarcane-based ethanol. And so there are different kinds of ethanol. That's something I learned in the research also, that there's ethanol that should be usable and ethanol that shouldn't be usable. So it's a matter of which kind of ethanol you use. It really, again, Brazil has about half the people we do, and they have about as much geography as we do. There's no excuse for the United States not doing it other than the oil companies and the car companies not wanting to do it because they want to keep making the money. And when it only takes $2.6 billion to build the pipelines, and we haven't done it, I mean, that's pennies in our budget, then it's clear that special interests are controlling us. And, Rick, it again comes down to the campaign contributions of the oil companies and how they want to keep us in their control.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole reason we haven't moved to public transportation, we can't seem to get any rational policy on that is, look, they want you in your cars, they want you buying gas. Same reason we can't really go forward on renewable energies in this state and across the country. But here's the thing, and I look at this election, and for me, this election is very important. This, to me, is 1980 all over again. When you're talking to people, are you seeing folks that are aware that if we have a President Romney, this is Reagan all over again, ripping the solar panels off of the White House and moving us strictly towards oil?
Well, Rachel Maddow just did a piece on Romney's tax evasion. He was the chairman of the audit committee of Marriott when they avoided $200 million in taxes. That's the whole deal. He is really the plutocracy, Rick, and the plutocracy controls the control on energy. I mean, this is endemic of all the issues, and
right.
You and I have these kinds of conversations periodically. We've got a guy who wants to add $250,000 tax breaks for millionaires, but make the middle class and lower classes pay $2,000 a year more. And that's what he thinks is going to solve our economic problems. When Bush tried it, and all it did was caused the Great Recession, and that's what Obama's digging us out of now. So the whole thing is based on special interests, and Romney is totally representative of those special interests, and that's what the American people see, and that's why he's losing more and more and more in the polls, and why the polls are shifting toward Obama right now.
Yeah, but I look at this, I look at Brazil. They are an oil-producing country, correct?
They have done some, but they really have reduced their oil production. by more than 80% to essentially zero today. They've decreased oil imports from more than 80% in the 1970s to essentially zero today. So they do a little bit of domestic oil production themselves, but their cars and their heat and their energy is mostly ethanol.
Yeah, because the reason I ask is, I thought they were a pretty decent sized producer of oil, and for them to move away from what they've
right.
got seems to me to be either a smart policy or kind of good business. If we're dumb enough to buy their oil and they can get off of it, charge us a third more, as you've pointed out, that's good for them.
Well, it is business. That's the point that Brian Williams made on Rock Center. He said Brazil is minting 20 new millionaires a week, prompting waves of wealthy Brazilians landing on South Florida shores spending millions. They now own the majority of new real estate value in Miami.
Nice.
And Brazil and Florida's top trading partner is Brazil, the head of the Miami-Dade County Economic Development Agency. And I hope your listeners go to my piece and look for it. They say, he said, this is the head of the economic development of Dade County. Brazil is our China. And so Brazil is making huge money by being smart, as you said, off an ethanol-based policy. And in the meantime, they're environmentally safe. They've reduced their deforestation to a fifth of what it was, and decreased their oil imports by more than 80%, making huge amounts of money while we're we're having disparity growth, rich versus poor in the United States, because of the economic model that we have, which is oil-based.
Yeah, and you look at this, and again, it comes down to the political will and the investment. And I look at Romney and the Republicans' position on we need to keep the tax breaks for the oil industry, the $4 billion a year that we make sure that they get. We could be using that $4 billion a year to be moving in a different direction, putting solar panels on every government building and on people's homes, and really moving away from some of the really dirty technology.
Well, we're going to be doing a piece on that, Rick, on the fact that the tax breaks for the oil companies and the Tea Party and the 2%. You remember that Boehner said to Obama, he whispered in his ear when it was on record, I can go along with that as a compromise to get the tax breaks for the 98%. Then his Tea Party boxed him in.
Yep.
Those 68 members of the House that are Tea Party members boxed Boehner in, and he cannot now move 1 inch away from tax breaks for the rich. But he was going to have to be, if this country's going to survive, I'll take heroes wherever we can get them. And we're going to do a piece that John Boehner can be a hero to America if he can pull the compromise and get his own party to support what's obvious and what the majority of Republicans even support, which is to break away from those tax breaks for the rich and to give the tax breaks to the middle and lower and to solve the budget crisis that way.
Yeah, at some point you've got to talk in sense of rational terms that you've got to bring more money in. You can't balance the budget off the backs of the most vulnerable, which is what the Ryan budget does. It goes after folks who they don't have it. And I love the argument that my conservative friends make that 46% of the people, Bob, don't pay any taxes. Well, did you realize that they don't make any money, that they don't have it?
Well, and I don't know why the campaign slogan for the Democrats is money doesn't grow on trees. You can't, out of nowhere, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that with the tax breaks, you can't balance the budget and you can't pay for the education and the environmental programs and the infrastructure that we need to do. It just can't happen. So you can't continue these tax breaks. What we're doing is funding the depletion of America with these tax breaks.
Yeah.
And Obama is finally sticking to his guns on that. He's finally making an issue out of it. I think, Rick, we haven't talked about this piece of it, but the Democratic strategy is brilliant. Let it go off the cliff just for a moment. Let the budget go off the cliff so that at that point you no longer are doing tax increases. You're doing tax breaks for the middle, and you're not increasing taxes on the rich because the law says that it goes up anyway. So let the law let it go up for the rich, but meanwhile then, the minute that happens, do the tax breaks for the rich, and you haven't broken Grover Norquist's pledge that way. And we have the votes to do that. Harry Reid has said that's the policy that we're going to do, and we can give the Republicans a little bit of rope that they can use that can actually possibly make this policy happen. We never stick to our guns, but we finally may have figured out a way to do it.
Well, I hope they do, because at some point you've got to bring in some revenue that you need to invest. I mean, you write in your piece that Brazil's spending whatever it needs to develop an infrastructure. They're doing what they need to encourage a nationwide eco-friendly economy. We don't seem to be doing that. We seem to believe in this invisible hand who will do whatever, and then of course subsidies for oil companies.
Well, it's worse. It's worse than that. GAO says that 40% of our bridges are unsafe, like the Minnesota crash that just happened. And so, if we and I've seen that for years. If we don't fix our bridges, and Obama has kept putting forward these infrastructure jobs, which are a great program because jobs beget the economy, and so the Republicans have blocked by obstruction every jobs bill that Obama comes through and pushes to do things like fix our infrastructure. And so, unless we do that, and we find the money to do that through a safe budget, then we're going to be in deep doo-doo, and we're going to continue to lose our standard of living in the United States.
Yeah, that's one of the things that just blows my mind, that we can't seem to be able to get something very simple like a transportation bill passed through.
Or first offenders. It's just unbelievable.
And again, the only thing I can come up with, Bob, is that it's all about getting that black guy out of the White House.
That's what it's all about. That's exactly what it's all about. I think it's just outrageous. I love what Reid did. They're doing birthers, and they're doing all those insinuations of Kenyan and all that stuff. And Reid has really played the game right back at them with he won't release his tax information, so there must be zeroing out there. I love it.
No,
and now it turns out that it could actually be true. What Rachel said tonight about Romney and his successful avoidance of taxes, and now the records are showing it in all his financial disclosure forms. We're getting at it different ways, with him being on the board of Marriott and chairman of the board of their audit committee, and leading them into having to make a $200 million settlement because his Marriott company avoided taxes. That's what he does, and that's his philosophy across the board. It's not just a matter of his personal taxes. That reflects his national policies as well.
Well, let me ask you the other question on that then, because I'm of the mindset that he did nothing illegal. The conversation we should be having.
Now it's turning out he did. He actually had to make a legal settlement on avoidance of $200 million of taxes as chairman of the audit committee of Marriott. So there is some illegality involved.
All right. Well, but the conversation we should be having, I think, is should all these tax breaks for these corporate special interests, should they even be there?
Well, of course not. Of course not. I mean, his 13.9% the 1 year he did announce is lower than any of us pays. So, I mean, of course not. Except for ExxonMobil, which is zero. And it wouldn't surprise me if Romney was zero for those years. We have every right to ask this.
Absolutely. Which is why the more this drags out, the more I think it's only going to hurt him. Last question I've got for you. I look at the statement the other day. I wanted to get your reaction to this Andrea Salt statement. I'm sure you've heard it. They outsourced this guy's job. He lost his health care.
Yeah.
This woman had a great quote.
If people had been in Massachusetts under Governor Romney's health care plan, they would have had health care.
Should she be fired?
Well, he's never fired Fernstrom for saying Etch-a-Sketch and all of that. So he doesn't fire his people for stupid statements. But the reality is she's told the truth.
Yep, I agree.
Romney created a terrific healthcare model in Massachusetts. He just can't, because of the extreme right, get anybody to say that it should be the case for the country anymore, like he used to say. He used to be saying that.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that you wonder how much of his soul he actually had to sell for this. Robert Weiner, I appreciate the time. Again, he's written a great article. We've got it linked over at thericksmithshow.com. You can click on Robert Weiner's name; it'll take you right there. Thanks so much, Bob.
Thanks, Rick. You going to the convention?
Nope, not going to be there. We're going to be talking to folks, so if you're there, we'd love to have you come and talk to us about what's going on.
I would be delighted. I'm going to be directing for the umpteenth convention, the Daily Press briefing room there. So I'd be delighted to call. Let's talk during the convention.
Absolutely, fantastic. I appreciate it.
Great. Talk to you.